Roles of a denizen. A content creator is a user that creates posts and is rewarded based on the quality of their content. A content evaluator is a user that helps assess the quality of content and enforces community standards. The evaluator is effectively taking part in a marketplace to curate content and is rewarded for early evaluation. A content consumer is a user that wishes to find and consume the most valuable content in a given subject area or within a community. A lair owner is a person holding tokenized ownership of all or part of a community lair. Owners are rewarded with a portion of all mining activity happening within their lair. Owners are incentivized to build the best community of content creators and evaluators.
What's up, denizens, and welcome to this week's DENDAO governance call. Today is June 23rd, so welcome to another Thursday. It's 3 p.m. Eastern time, as always. Joe, how you doing?
All right.
Good to be back with you and to talk about Den. We got a good list of things too. We got a LCP that wrapped up. We've got some priorities to talk about again already. New, we feel like we just did this, which is good. And then I figured we might talk about how some of the voting works and maybe hit some basic points that we've hit in the past, but not since we've done these calls maybe on YouTube, back when we were doing Twitter Spaces or even before that.
Right.
And we haven't hit them really recently for any new denizens. So that's what we have in mind. And then I believe Greg's already on the line. So we've got some community feedback and discussion as well planned for us today, and whoever else joins. And just as a reminder, this is hosted weekly over in the DENDAO layer on Den, and there's a link at the top of the agenda to join the call if you want to join us here today. So do that if you want. Okay, so let's jump right into it. We've got the last priority cycle implemented pretty darn quick, and we have the next one voted and results for that vote. So it looks like we're doing anonymous posts, right? Let me pull that up now.
Yes.
Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So anonymous post won the DENDAO, what do you call it? The prioritization vote.
Right.
So anonymous posting, as a reminder, that's going to be available for all layers. It's not layer specific. It's a new feature. And the idea is that you as a layer owner are going to be able to decide if you want to allow anonymous posts, if you want to disallow anonymous posts, or if you want to have a layer that maybe is only anonymous posts is the general idea on that one. This week on Coffee, we talked about, for example, like news agencies or even, like a whistleblower's layer, where you enforce anonymity just for, security, safety for all parties, that kind of thing. Or, political opinions that maybe you don't want to, just for reasons that you don't, that you want to be anonymous while making sure that people can discuss them, So that's the value to me, is to be able to facilitate discussion on topics that people may not want to attribute to their public profile or personality, or that personality that they have on Den, or whatever it is,
Right.
So useful stuff. So that's pretty good as far as like how that matches up with the last one too, because we just got the ability to have to censor content basically. Although Den is very censorship resistant, it is important to have self-governance tools in place so that the individual layer DAOs can vote on topics and as a community decide what's not welcome there, and things like that. So that actually is another topic on this agenda. So that would have been, well, no, it's not. Okay. That was last week, I was thinking. So yeah, in addition, because of last cycles, last development cycles feature set, we have been able to propose another vote on DENDAO to lift the what are we calling it? The embargo on not safe for work or adult layers, where you have to pass an age check to get in there to make sure that it's just different types of content that has other things to deal with, to safely do it, to appropriately do it.
Right.
And as it turns out, that's one of the layers that won in June. So we've now got upcoming firearms, photography, and eroticism on the way. So that'll be cool. I know Lisa has some firearms. I've been talking to her about like showing off our guns together on the firearms layer. So that'll be cool.
Right.
And let's see. Those are the two main topics. So unless you, do you have anything else? Do we want to talk about those for a minute? Do you want to read through the agenda the rest of the way and then see what we got?
Yeah, we'll just go through them. I mean, cool. The voting thing, I want to make sure we cover, but yeah.
Cool.
So.
With the priorities, we vote. The way we've been doing it is DENDAO votes on the next thing to be implemented once we're at least, almost done with the one being worked on. And one of the things that has been approved by DENDAO, but not implemented, is the restriction of only being able to tag with 3 tags per account per post. And I don't know if that needs to take up a spot on the cycle, like the prioritization list, or not. So want to talk about that.
Yeah, the another similar one was the very first DENDAO vote was to put dollar equivalent balances, and that's been in a priority list. I think it was just an oversight. It probably should just be in the priority list with everything else. If we get it, if there happen to have been spare cycles, then we could just do it also.
Right.
But it would be good to have the priority called out,
Yeah, that is good. And I guess I hadn't thought about it, but excuse me. I think didn't that feature with the displaying it in the dollar metrics? Didn't we roll that into like the internal market features set?
Maybe.
I know we did some consolidation.
But it was there for 2 months at least. At least. Well, I say that. I think it was in every the priority vote at least once before we rolled it in. I don't know where it was in the latest, but
gotcha. Okay. So maybe we should put it on there. There's room. I know there's room for at least 1 or 2 more.
Yeah. Because otherwise it would be, let's say it takes us a week. Well, maybe the DAO would have rather had us vote on that other one, or would have voted to have us work on that other one for a week and finish it. So probably should just be in that vote. But.
Cool. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify it because we talked about it, but I don't think I ever wrapped my head around the direction there.
Yeah.
And you know what? You don't have to wait for that to happen before you stop spamming tags. Just as a point of reference, just as a note, you can take it upon yourself to stop tagging more than 3 at a time, just voluntarily. That is an option.
Yeah. And if you spam, you don't get anything from it. You're more than likely to not be rewarded, because the only chance of getting rewarded is if you got any of those correct and someone clicks on them. But usually you're going to annoy someone enough to vote down all of the ones that you shouldn't have marked, in which case you're going to be at a loss. So
yeah, those are consensus based as well. It is similar to the evaluations per post. Yeah. And speaking of the evaluations per post, there was some conversation on what it comes down to is like, why do downvotes exist, and why am I getting them when obviously the majority of the votes are, positive, and is there anything we could or should do about that? I've got some opinions, but we can talk about that some more, and maybe that'll be a good time to go ahead and bring Greg up as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what do we want to talk about with the votes and the priorities list votes and the LCP winners votes? Those are the 2 bigger things that we can talk about today.
Yeah. Next development priority. So an anonymous one, right? So
right. Yeah.
We talked about that. And while it's being developed, I guess what else is in there? And let's assume that we are rolling in that the three tag feature.
Into this list.
Yeah, I swear there was
Okay.
another one, but either way,
There is. I can't think of it right now, but there is. I know there is.
there are a couple more. So I mean, we could look at them. I don't. Do you have any thoughts on what you would want to see next?
To see put in here next.
What's that?
As far as the
No, if you go up to the list, after anonymous.
like what would be a good flow to work on next? Is that sort of the question? Okay. Yeah. So you know what? I know Greg has some opinions on this.
Okay.
Greg, if you're ready or not, I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and bring you up because we did mention it a little bit earlier, and I know you wanted to talk about this. So I'll go ahead and bring you up. Are you there, sir?
I'm here. How's it going?
Awesome. All right, cool. So we were just, I'm sure you heard, but we got finished with the flagging and the smart tags, which was like the first version or the first implementation of like a smart contract integration. We're getting anonymous posting is being worked on now. And then prioritization wise, I know you talked earlier about, now this would have to be something that was proposed and then voted on separately before it could make it into this list in the first place. But like Greg, I know had some ideas about DAO treasuries being managed from the layers, especially existing DAOs that already have a smart contract on Ethereum that could be triggered by the governance output, from Den kind of thing, which seems, pretty doable. And then besides that, let's see, anonymous. And then so let me just read down the list. Anonymous is being worked on now. So internal market features is, right here. This is where dollar metric got rolled into. So that one is the ability to do a whole bunch of stuff. That's pretty big. It's pretty complicated, but it's all spelled out pretty nicely. And I think there's a pretty good idea about how it would work.
It's very innovative for the way that the swapping will work. So.
I think so too. Yeah. I was talking to someone on coffee about it. I forget who. And we started talking about selling it at an ROI, a calculated ROI based on metrics on chain, based on actual numbers, emissions per token. Cause like you can objectively assign an ROI to it without speculating, or at least it's within like assuming that the metrics continue the way they are.
Arbitrary valuation.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know what the terms are on that, but it's really cool. Yeah. Because you then wouldn't have to spend any time trying to assess. You could just say, I want to sell this, and it'll be like, how many how long do you want, so assuming, let's say you hold one token for the Elon layer, and that one token emits a half a matter per day passively just for holding it because of the activity that's in that layer. Then you could say like, oh, okay, I want to, the system will tell you like how long it'll take holding it to earn back the matter you pay for it, that kind of thing. And as a seller, you can just select that as the sales price.
And I think I misspoke because I think what you were talking about was this versus what what led to this design was what happens, in my opinion, too often when there's not enough liquidity for one, and or in NFTs when it's totally arbitrary, and it leads to either cases where it's obvious money laundering or obvious manipulation, where I'm going to just hold enough of them and sell a few up here so that we set the price, set the floor, and all we have to do is maintain a little bit of that.
Sell it to yourself or something for a big price so that the number appears.
But you have to pay the artist fee. It's like, that's to
yourself, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
But the Ethereum fee is high. Okay, but you just sold it to yourself for $1 million, and you just repriced all of your assets at that.
It's all obvious that stuff goes on. In fact, I think that's how most successful NFT projects deal, is that they have a big VC on board or somebody fully willing to maybe work in the gray area there. But either way, that led to, this is a totally objective way to measure the value. And the only question then is, do I want to buy something that, how do I say this? On the expensive side, it would take me a long time to pay it off. On the cheap side, it's like, it's maybe going to pay itself off before a month's out. And either way, the interesting part then is the reason that I'm buying it is because I intend to make it more valuable in that time window. So I'm going to bring more content and I'm going to up those numbers, which is what everybody would want. And then it's objectively, at least somewhat provable that I'm buying it for the purposes of increasing its value on my own. Just some pretty cool stuff there, because that's the only thing you would know going in.
And then it also incentivizes people, and I guess this is something else that is related is, do we need to build the leaderboard first so that we already have those metrics to go on and display them and have a landing page to shop around and all that?
And by the way, on the other side, from the seller side, that's the other thing. It's like, well, I don't know what to sell it for, or $5 a piece. And it's like, one lot when there's 7 million in a certain layers is not worth $5.
Right.
And that's, somewhat what you see on OpenSea, that, they're all over the place, and people are trading them a little bit, some of the lot, but they're very arbitrary prices, right? There's not much rhyme or reason behind what the price is set at. So,
right.
That's kind of why this is, it's like, oh, this could be a pretty cool thing. So
I think that we should add into that a feature where, let's say you're somebody and you have a channel outside of Den somewhere and you've been thinking about bringing it in. And you have, maybe you want to do it in a layer that's not a business layer. You want it to be a hard cap token limit. Problem is you don't have any, let's say it's something about gaming and you don't have any gaming lot, right? You should be able to set like an offer, like, hey, I'll pay a 9-month ROI for this many, this up to this many of this layer, if any of the owners are willing to part with any of their tokens. That way, liquidity wise, that way it's like if somebody does want to sell, that there's like there's basically something there for them to sell to already, or and then maybe it'll spur activity of like the layer itself on the leaderboard, for example, being like, oh man, let's get ahead on the leaderboard so that it's more, it costs more matter to buy these, kind of thing.
Yep.
So that's that feature.
Go ahead.
I especially like this feature because it will enable faster price discovery more broadly, right? Like the price is typically found by the more transactions that happen in trade and in any asset. You're going to start to understand its value better. Like if you want to understand what your topic of your layer is worth, then seeing people buying and selling it is going to be really how you reveal. Like influence over how that's managed is a powerful thing if the idea is powerful.
Yeah, and it's kind of confirmation if somebody buys it. There's on the one hand you have something that's more objectively evaluating the value of it, and on the other hand you have once somebody actually makes that swap, then you're validating it like, yep, okay, sure enough, somebody's willing to pay that much too.
I don't know
Reddit or any other platform that does topical. You can't really guesstimate that. There's no math.
The only thing that you can get on that is number of posts, number of subscribers, things like that, right? How much karma? But it could be. The other thing that's interesting about it is, I imagine that some layers will sell more on the cheap end versus the long end, and that'll be an interesting factor as well. I mean, I don't even know how you would visualize it yet, unless maybe you have 3 lines or multiple lines or something to know. Like say, let's say 10,000 lot was sold at the 3-month mark of, and at a certain price at a 3-month mark. So that the 3-month, they're going to move in unison with the monthly average, but the amount sold at each level is going to be different.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you might be able to say, no, that's useful. That's useful because then you could have a daily updated, like,
because you would know people are trying to distribute more because I want more people to own it, so I'm going to sell it on the cheap end. Because I want more people to have a reason to be there and to vote on stuff.
But the actual sale. The actual sale points themselves, though, like you might have a token's swap rate might change every period, depending on how the math plays out.
Oh, yeah.
But then you would have another line that would be like, okay, regardless of that, here's the different swap points that has actually traded at, for
Right.
example.
Okay.
At the same
Here's a
time.
hypothetical though. Here's a hypothetical downside though. Let's say I wanted to, as Apple, take over all of a topic, and I want to come in and buy just everything that I can get my hands on. I'm willing to pay whatever I can just so I can own the moderator role entirely.
Okay. Ideally, they do.
How do we look at that? Is that
The great thing is that, in all truth, the crazy thing is, here's what I think is actually good about that. And I understand what the bad part about it is it would effectively reduce liquidity. You're not going to have as many trades because they aren't going to be able to offer $1 million per lot because you just can't, right? So you're not going to. So people will say, "Wait, Apple really wants this." And they're offering to buy everything at the highest price, but the highest price is only $50. So I'm not selling, right? And it's an interesting thing because it's going to be cooked into the actual metrics. So it'll be an objective measure instead of a speculative.
You know what?
So there just won't be trades.
Since there's a stepwise move that has a sort of a boxed range, there's no pay everything you can pay an absurd amount to take control.
Yeah, which traders would hate it, but
well, at the same time,
maybe.
if that started happening and people knew it was Apple trying to get them, maybe that layer gets more spicy and more valuable as time goes on, because now there's this talk about like, oh, they're trying to get bought out. And then the longer that company waits to get them or can't get them, like the more they have to pay because, I don't know, it would play out differently than in a typical situation. And I don't know that it's ever been done that way. So it's hard to say how that would go.
But it might set up a situation where a proposal that takes into account some of the risks of someone purchasing centralization of control.
Now, I will say the funny thing is this won't be affected by that, but OpenSea would. So they would go to OpenSea and offer tremendous sums, and people would take them all to OpenSea. And so it would still happen, but it wouldn't happen through this.
I got you. And then also, if that centralizing force happens, people just open a new layer if they want a decentralized, or Apple could just buy a layer.
Off that market, actually, that
so
could
many
be protective against that.
What's that? I'm sorry.
It could actually keep liquidity off that market. It could be protective against that phenomenon.
Yeah, well, the liquidity isn't there.
Reasonable, they're not going to go to OpenSea first if it's right in the interface.
Well, it depends on who in their company is doing the research, honestly, on how to do that. There's different angles. Yeah, interesting though.
Yeah, it's cool.
So,
I like that one, but I probably won't vote for it next, even though I really want it. I'd probably vote for it later.
So Denizen Flags, which is some version of displaying metrics and uniqueness per denizen, so that you can you can know a little bit more about who it is you're interacting with just by looking at their either their avatar or maybe some metrics that are in a drop down under it or beside it, or whatever that ends up becoming. Or it could be a nice image that is auto-generated that has a certain pattern on it with like stars and stripes and pins based on if you're an owner of this layer, or if what your the interesting one I think there is the economic reputation, which we don't have implemented right now, but would not world facing, I guess. We use it a little bit for governance, behavioral stuff. But other than that, we don't have like a reference that any denizen can look at to see someone's economic reputation. And what that would be is like how much of a, for lack of a better word, how much of a drain they are on like the economy, taking assets out of Den instead of using them inside of Den. Because those are kind of the two options, right? You can remove them from the platform, or you can use them in the platform.
Yeah, because
you can use them on a lot of stuff in the platform. And I think the only use outside of it right now that I've seen has been swapping it for like Ethereum.
Yeah, and it's a little controversial, but The interesting thing is that, let's say someone from a poorer country in the world is on Den doing things properly in a great manner, but they have to exit matter or lore in order to pay for rent, right? It's a noble and it's a great thing that Den can do that. But the issue is that the more that happens, the less the less that matter is valued at, and it then doesn't attract anymore, or the tool diminishes its sharpness. So this is intended to give an incentive to those same people to do it as little as possible, or the people who are on the edge who don't need to not do it. And effectively, because the people who are putting energy in can see that, and can they then attenuate how much, because all of us want the value of the market to grow organically, so that more people are attracted to bring content and everything else. So
yeah, all things being equal, if I had two different very, very equal pieces of content to put energy on, and one of them I knew as soon as I did it, that person was going to take it out of Den and go liquidate it, versus the other person is going to stake it on Den so that they can vote more in the LCP. I'm probably going to want to give it to the person who's going to want to vote more with it instead of who wants to go liquidate it, that kind of thing. Because that's what happens if you keep it, you're auto stake and you earn lore, and then you can own more of the platform, is that side of it.
Right. So
cool. So there's that. There's number 5 here is notifications, upgrade and refactor. By thread and by at. Sure.
Real quick, on that same one, it's not in there in the Denizen flags, but related to the downvote, upvote, I wonder if we shouldn't do something with a transparency initiative where we
like
effectively
well,
beyond consensus definite, but I'm even wondering to make it like, here it is, who voted up on this and who voted down on this. We kind of cut it so we didn't have any drama or people fighting that way, but and also to you think about it, am I going to vote down on someone if they might then come and vote down everything that I post, right? Just because I voted down on something.
Or on the flip side, if maybe you would not vote down on that when you should, but then I kind
of like that, Joe. I think you can do some really interesting stuff with that. Like, imagine for example, a layer that wanted to have people explain their rationale as part of the effort, right? You might be able to systematically incentivize the kind of behavior that you want there, in terms of, like, if you downvote, please post type of thing.
But what if there's like a let's just hypothetical say there's a Chinese psyop and I'm voting it down, and then the denizens to target to get rid of the naysayers is shown, and then you can maybe diminish their reputation intentionally so that they have less of a vote.
I think it's bad because then the people won't vote stuff down that they should be voting down. And and in all truth, it's the weird thing too, because coming from places like Facebook and Reddit, people tend to think that a downvote is a disagreement, when really it should be saying, this content, I bet that this content is not going to be liked by this community. It's either the wrong layer or it's crappy. It's just not well written or something else.
It's a way of saying, does this fit here? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Or at the very least, you don't even necessarily have to do that. You can simply like, if you disagree with something, you should want to vote it up as long as it's on topic, so that other people see it, so they can chime in and say, no, this is not, you know what I mean? Like, the higher up in the line, the more visibility something gets that you disagree with, unless you're just completely off base and wrong, which you'll find out in this case, you'll typically get confirmation of your own bias when other people come in and say, yeah, this is shitty, but they'll also vote it up so that everybody can see and converse about that.
And the funny thing about it is it's really hard to define because it is a prediction market. So literally some people can come in and say, I disagree with that, downvote, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a downvote. And so the funny thing is you are just, based upon the culture of the community and that piece of content, the optimum result is to essentially bet on which way it's going to go and then put how much energy in, for strength of that bet. I mean, I'm going to bet 1,000 energy that this is bad content. Rewards. Okay. So
yeah. And I was gonna say this about this anyway, but like if you reach a quorum, then your negative energy is converted to positive energy anyway. It's just absolute energy. It's not negative energy anymore. You actually get paid more because that person downvoted you so heavily, but everybody else came in and upvoted you, and the consensus in the quorum is like, oh, actually this is a trending post. And those people that were trying to like, I don't like this, they're actually just giving you more matter in the end. So
that's what's beautiful about
it. It's a way of countering the sort of manipulation of the platform as opposed to the engagement with the platform.
Right.
Yeah, because the attackers aren't hurting anyone. You might hurt their feelings, but that's it.
But you're also making sure that you're paying their bills so they can keep creating.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I interrupted.
No, that's an important thing. That's an important thing to understand too, because it is like on its face, it looks pretty simple, but under the hood, there's actually a lot going on there.
Yeah.
So we have notifications upgrade. That's something I think we've all noticed as we add more things that notify us, that it could use a little bit of a polish cycle, kind of a quality of life cycle with that. 6 is show consensus. This is where the proof report would be. Kind of like if you pull up a proof report from Eternal Report, you will be able to pull a report from any piece of content to see the consensus. This is where you were saying reveal who voted or not.
Yeah.
You would at least be able to say what, maybe without revealing who they are, you could say this many denizens voted this way, this many denizens voted that way.
Yeah, this was the thing to pop up after, and I think it was after 8 or 12 hours, because by that time, the rewards are much diminished. So if you waited until the 12th hour to vote, you're not going to be, unless you put in tens of thousands of energy, you're not going to be able to really have much skin in the game on it. And at that point, it shows you, okay, the consensus is generally that this is bad content for this layer or good content for this layer. And you can see that the market is this large, and you can see how many people voted and all that. Because right now we don't have the visibility into that unless it is your content. And then, then you get a report. So
yeah. And that's kind of what I was getting at. I think it was last week when I was saying, one of my tips for evaluators is hang out in chat in a layer that you want to look for new content on.
Yeah.
I don't think I explained though, what I meant by that was like literally the earlier you are in evaluating, the higher the reward you get if you're correct in your, and it's
exponential. So it's like every hour that passes. And the original design, I will tell you, was supposed to be an array. So the first person would have twice as much power as the second person, and 3 times as much as the third person, so on, so on, so on. But we just, for the efficiencies and the scalability, engineering said, hey, could we do it this way? And it's like, sure, it makes sense. It actually might even be a little more reasonable, that it's literally by the hour. So if you're anytime within that first hour, you're at the same weight as anybody else in that first hour. You might put in twice as much energy as they did, but you're at the same weighting of that energy.
I can tell you how that would affect me. Go ahead. I'm sorry, you're a little quiet, and sometimes I didn't realize you were talking. Sorry about that, Greg.
Oh, sorry. Let me actually just make sure that my headphones are.
You're good now.
Okay.
Well,
cool.
you were good for a moment. You're in and out.
How about now, Jack?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. And now I've lost my train of thought. No, I was actually thinking that like the narrower you can make that window in time where it changes the calculation, the better, right? Like if you get down to milliseconds, that's ideal.
Well, that's sort of how it is now, because after that very first person votes, then the next person votes, and then that's the next person, right? Isn't that how it is
No,
now?
it's right now. It's within the hour window.
Oh, right
And
now
we
it's
did it for
I thought you
scalability.
were okay. Got you.
We did it for that reason, to make it the query is much more efficient. But you look at it, the driver for that whole the time based or the time component of the evaluation reward is to effectively, if you've ever been in any subreddits where a very tight community, but a lot of people come in and attack the community. I'm speaking of the Donald. They're any of the political communities, they have the same problem, that they will tend to post over and over again. The admins or moderators will tell everybody, stay on the new tab. Please, do your do your duty, stay on the new tab, because they're the ones that push stuff up or down to get it in or out of the mix. And it's a lot of work, right?
Mhm.
And it's unrewarded. It's what the 4chans call the Jannies, where they do it for free, right?
Mhm.
It was like, why do they do it for free? It's like, they're horrible. Why do they do it for free?
They just want to clean up the place so badly that they'll
Yeah,
do the janitor for free.
so one way or another, we put this in there because it's like, okay, now you are rewarded for being the first to mark or to bet, essentially, to signal that this content is good or bad. And so anyway, that's what it's about.
It's totally awesome. Makes total sense.
Cool.
I am for IAM's in the chat. Thanks for listening in. A couple of questions too there, and I'll bring them in once we get through this segment. Just wanted to give you a shout out there. No, that's all right.
Layer metrics, yeah.
Yeah, layer metrics and leaderboard. This is the one I was saying might need to be done before the one we really want. Like the coolest one seems like this one, but the one we kind of need to get there, because this was what the question was. I said I was talking a little bit about it on Coffee in the comments there. The question was like, is it going to be like, how many landing pages are we going to have? Is it going to be this, are we going to have one page for both this and that? Or are you going to have two different systems? It was a good point, because I think that the leaderboard and the swap board can be the same thing in the end, probably. So that, or at least on the leaderboard, you can have a button to swap into or out of some of that layer, or even like personal lot, if we ever, when and if we get there.
There'll be real gamification for people to get their layers.
Just gives you this overview about what the hell is it you're doing anyway. Like, what is all this stuff, and how do they interact with each other? And because that's the place you can take a lot of these other features and you can start putting it up on the leaderboard. And that becomes like a robust metrics page, because you can see what layers are typically cross-posting between each other, or what's the top 30 earners on the platform, or something like that. That kind of thing. Or the top 30 evaluators would be even more interesting, because you can kind of see already, you can kind of get an idea of who the creators are on the platform, but you don't really know like who the top earning evaluators are at all. So that would be an interesting thing to have up on the leaderboard. Give credit where credit's due, doing the work, performing the tasks, that kind of deal. And cross-posting, like I said, that can be something that goes right up there as a metric as well. Maybe that goes into some other, all of these are metrics you can use to then trigger something else if you want to build it later.
Right. You can get more of what you measure, so we should measure more, basically.
Yep.
And
again, bookmarks, same thing. Most bookmarked content would be valuable. What is everybody wanting to make sure that they keep, like I'm gonna have 5 things that I'm always sending people, like, oh yeah, here's a guide for that, or here's an intro for that, or here's the white paper, or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yep. So what? Go ahead. Keep going. Keep going.
And then the last 3, we've got translation features, which is pretty self-explanatory. something built into Den that can do auto translations for you, like click here to translate to your language, like some platforms have. A layer poll that doesn't require lot to vote in it, sort of a non-lot GI, but just a a poll that doesn't do anything, but as it allows you to gather stuff. A straw poll, yeah. And then to automate the process of the LCP. Right now, a lot of it's manual, but the process is there, and so gluing all that together to be automated is one of the features on there as well. And I just found out from backstage that the one we couldn't think of a minute ago was performance improvements.
Yes.
So there's room for 13, we got 12.
Yes.
Yeah, that still matters a lot. Just for what it's worth, the speed of interaction on any given platform is really going to drive how much people like using it. Mm-hmm. It's hard to point to it and say, yeah, this is awesome, but it's the subjective feel, like you sort of have a climate of it.
And you do get a feeling.
If you can meaningfully improve it, it's always a good idea too.
Yeah, and that's I consider that like a quality of life thing for the end user as well. It might even be just or more important for the devs, but the end user, like right now, like chat and DMs are awesome, but there's like you can make it feel better. It's an iterative thing where over time you can make it like quality of life. For governance issues, for example, there's one type of GI that you can only get to in one area, where everything else is in a completely different area. So
there's some things like quirkiness where things that annoy me, but they're still workable. It feels like a system because everything is pretty unique, but as an example, the DMs, sometimes the refreshes are kind of choppy, right? It's okay, but things like that, the nav is like there's where I should be able to click. There are a couple of places, like say I think inside of a governance issue, you can't click on the layer and go to the layer.
Right.
There's not a link there. And when you go to the layers list, it has the settings and something else, but it doesn't. It could just as well have the governance, and the governance page should have the MISC included or something. There are little things like that, and it's not too much. But those.
You got to think about, and a lot of it needs using before you realize, like, okay, this made sense at the time, but now this probably belongs over there. Or, this is a setting, so of course you would go to settings to change it, but actually you're making a GI, so maybe it should be.
And the funny thing is, all those settings originally were in the where they were because they were the only people that could set them was one of the two admins, which was the person who proposed the layer, if it was an LCP, and I think the top lot holder. So those two people were admins. They could change the settings.
So of course it would be in your settings. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting, but there's probably some improvements there that could be made. So.
Yep. All right. So there's our list.
What do you think? What do you guys like? I think originally, I will tell you up front, I was thinking flags, and not as the flag, but just to get that data there. But when you say cross posting, I think that because I'm thinking as a whole of this, and I don't want to affect anyone's votes, but I'm like, I think it's important to say this as a whole. If we got in the layer metrics and leaderboard, that alone would provide so much insight as to how things are happening, that then would lead straight to that internal market features. That would be amazing. That could really make a dynamic where people would start paying attention to stuff that, it's just kind of, going by right now is probably more important even than the denizen flags and the more info there. So
I could see the leaderboard being leading later to like that could be converted later on into like a dashboard to where then each individual denizen could have a leaderboard that's personalized only to their content or what they own. Right. Of the world I care about, here's my leaderboard. Here's my dashboard.
Yes. And here's some underperforming stuff. You should probably just get rid of this, or you should go and improve it. He's like,
Right.
why is no one posting there? Let's get some people in, or maybe I need to give some of this lot to somebody that can, bring some more content in or something. I don't know.
Well, it also sets up kind of an interesting possibility for just like how some people in DeFi like to use the mirroring investment, right? If you can grab somebody else's feed based on the underlying data and actually get fed what somebody else that you follow is getting fed, you can learn a lot about a person, that you're trying to get to know better by what they post. But you can also find things that you like that way because this person always says stuff in the layer that I follow that I enjoy. So what else are they up to? And those kinds
Yeah.
of metrics power that to be more granular than just a raw feed.
Yeah, that's cool because you could potentially even click on somebody else's profile on Den and maybe see what their dashboard would look like based on their world or something. Peer into their world.
It
Um,
approaches Twitter
have,
wall
like,
kind of functionality.
the what time? I'm sorry. Type.
Kind of like a Twitter wall, like where you can
Ah.
click on somebody's profile and see what they've done.
Yeah. You can do that in Den already, to an extent, and you can even whenever you follow someone, you'll see the posts. This reminds me of something we didn't put on the agenda.
Yes.
You can even see their posts in layers that they subscribe to, if you're not in that layer. So you can see, like, if you're following somebody that's in your layer, oh, this person's cool. Well, you follow that person, that denizen, and then you'll know where they're hanging out. So you can maybe go check that out too. Maybe you didn't know there was a community over there, but now that you see them in there, and that shows up right in your feed, like in your layers that you're subscribed to.
Yeah. And then one other feature that I think we need to add in there for the vote is that idea from Hyperion Frequency that had essentially, and this would need to not be just in the features. I think we would need to vote on it because it would be an algorithm change, but it would effectively say, if you hold lot, and we'll have to have different options for people to vote on. Let's say I hold lot and I walk away. I don't even come into Den, or I ignore that layer entirely. Maybe I don't even subscribe to it. At some point, it does make really good sense to say the lot only generates matter if you are active in that layer with that lot. So, and it could be, we would we'll have to make a proposal and say, okay, some combination with different weights, maybe that you voted in any active governance, or you posted any active governance, that you created content by posts or replies, and then the easy one that is very, very important to a layer is how much energy you put in, right? So if you put a ton of energy in, then you're considered you're ranked pure active, and you have the full force of your lot generating matter. If you are totally inactive, does your lot go down to 10% of its generation power, or is it to zero?
Yeah, like active versus dormant accounts.
Yeah,
Because it is a SAP. An inactive lot holder is a SAP on the overall earnings and reward systems.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't have to be if you had a delegation mechanism on top of that, to where, like, I want to be actively contributing to this. Who in this layer do I trust to hold my voting power for me?
Energy.
So you might be able to incentivize delegation such that even if you want to be a passive participant, you're still
now
at least deciding who
you
want to wield your.
I would agree with that on, like, say, governance. Like, say, if I don't know the governance side, I could delegate it to Dave because he knows, better how this community should be run. But on the activity, I think that's where it matters, because we want, if you're holding a membership, you need to be actively, following the content there and voting on it. Yeah, this is good or bad, or creating your own content or doing something else. And that's what we're trying to incentivize. But if you can just delegate that, I don't think that would work still. I might be wrong, but I think that would not be, because that's the one thing that was, it was that people can be basically generating matter with lot and then not participating at all. They just come in and they say, okay, I want to buy some of this lot, and I just sit there. It's totally passive. And in the crypto world, that's a positive. But when you're trying to incentivize a community to actually be vibrant, then in order to get the posts in there, they're competing for energy, so they're going to post in a different layer. And so, by the way, I see oftentimes that people are posting in layers that should be somewhere else. The cross posting would be valuable, but anyway.
I feel like this would, definitely have to be an optional thing where people who are already wielding voting power in the community would have to decide to turn that capability on. But it would probably be useful in the context of like more traditional DAOs coming in and using Den as a platform for governing it.
Yeah, it makes sense in governance.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I would just have to think about it more, and it might make sense also the other with energy and activity. I would just have to think about it more. Like I have to think about governance less. That makes sense, but I don't know if it would work with energy, because the energy thing is supposed to be sort of a per denizen thing.
Yeah, because it wasn't even like, say I have I don't know what my percentage is right now. I have a large portion of the history layer. I'm a history guy. I love it. I gave away a bunch of it in order to trim my my voting power down, for one, but also to get the people who are bringing content in a piece of it. And so now it's more vibrant than it was. And I need to keep doing that. But I think the thing that I hadn't really thought about was the my ability to follow the topic day in and day out. So when content does come in that is original content, I need to put energy into it, because if I don't, then there's not enough energy there, so they don't get enough rewards. So they will typically get the consensus because enough people are voting on it, but not enough of the followers in there have enough energy to put a ton in.
That makes sense.
So
that could be a case where, like, if you're asleep, you might do time zone delegation or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Like anyway, you could have someone else vote.
Actually, if the funny thing is with that, what I find really interesting is that I, in that case, as a lot holder, have to act counter to the early eval. And not that I'm not trying, it's still better to evaluate it early, but I am cognizant that, hey, I'm putting in 1,500 energy on this post, or 20, or 25 or 44,000 or something, because it's an amazing post, and it might be 18, 24 hours after. So I know I'm not getting much reward for doing so, but I am a lot holder, so the layer will get some of the matter that comes of that, but they'll get enough that they'll come back and keep posting that. So
yeah, more importantly, the content creator themselves gets that energy. Like
that's the point.
And then, like, in a way, you could think, well, it's not about me, it's about them, but it is about you, because you want them to choose your layer because it pays out more reliably. Which is, I think, what you were getting at.
Back to build because the more content, like, I'm surprised some of the content that's in there is really good. There is a lot of regional stuff, right? So I'm like, so I'm always thinking, how could I bring in some other regions to, get some people to post some stuff from wherever they are.
Have you seen Gravity Crab in there? I know he was really into history, but I don't know if he's hangs out in there or not. I haven't been there enough myself.
Mostly I've seen a lot of the Serbs. There's a ton of Serbian history in there.
Interesting.
It's like,
cool.
It's stuff that I never knew. It's like, wow, that's cool. It's like pretty cool reading it. So,
well, that's what we want,
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of exactly. Yeah.
It's neat.
I am for I am had a question about. No, that's all right. Since you were talking about quality of life stuff too, I think whenever you put this in here, but the list of layers. Yeah, I think we had in the beginning we were thinking, okay, let's throw the alphabet up there so you can click on the letter. But then I was talking to Litecoin Lisa, and I think that's who it was anyway. And we were like, oh, you know what? Because she, as a new user, had not realized if you scroll down to the bottom of the list of what you're subscribed to, it then shows everything else. So she's going through the alphabet and she's getting like to W, and she's like, it's not in here. But if you keep going, then it starts over. So you could have maybe two, like the columns, like in
tabs.
Tabs, like in the GI or the chat area, have it where, what you're following and everything else. And maybe also the alphabet, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. You can do the alphabet, you could do type ahead. I could type a word that pops up, one of them, I don't know.
And I'll admit, this is, this is something that like other people are going to find things like bookmarks and this feature here more important than like maybe I would. And that's only because personal preference, but I also don't really like, I use the desktop a lot. And so I'm usually just Control F, type in what I want, and it goes there and it's fine. And so I don't think of like, oh, everyone's not a nerd. You know, like you should probably make this a little bit more fluid for somebody who's trying to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
So
And
definitely.
for the hypermobile among us, it makes it a lot easier if you can do you know, quick filtering types of things and quickly navigate lists, because lists get a little more arduous to move through when you're doing it from a smartphone.
Yep. Or the mobile only, you know, is another large demographic. It's not a minority at all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I spend most of my time on the iOS edition. So
Yeah. If I'm really cozy, I'm probably on the phone instead. Yeah. If I don't want to get up and be at a desk, if I'm kicking back in the beanbag or something. All right. So let's see where we at here. We decided that 3 tag limit is going to go on the priority voting. Let's hit the layers real quick. We said who they are. But just a reminder, it was 3 and 5. Do we want to keep doing 3 and 5, or do you want to throw a proposal up to do a different numbers and stuff?
I want to do 3 and either 8 or 13, I think.
Let's go down the list. What would that mean?
See, where would it be? Yeah. Where
So
would
2
it be?
million. Number 3 got 2 million. And then number 8, almost 1 million. Number 13, 500,000.
Yeah,
Right.
13.
So number 13 is a quarter of what number 3 is.
Yeah.
So probably 13. I got to say, the one that we did with 8 and 13 was pretty cool because you got the lower numbers.
Maybe 5
in
and 13.
there.
We would not be in the millions then, and yet it would still leave it. People had been taking that. I mean, how many people created the runners up, and were they runners up or were they the?
Oh yeah, 2. So we have, I believe, World News is coming, right? That's one of them that got funded for the runners up.
Unfortunately, I did not get enough. But
I'm in the wrong list. I mean, so runners up is ordered by unique voters. So let me get in the right one. World News and let's see, what was the other one?
DIY.
There was one more. DIY. Oh, okay. Where's that?
Which
Let me just DIY. Yeah. Okay, that'll be an important layer. I was kind of waiting for that to happen.
it's way down.
Way down there. Because
72,000. Wow.
Yeah, 72,000. And I've got a little bit. I got a little bit in there. I got just enough.
Wow.
So that's going to be great because we kind of need a DIY layer where people can share like how to make stuff themselves and how to design things properly. And, you know, like, oh, you got to replace a door in your house. How do you do
I
that?
only got 0.28%.
Oh, yeah.
Travesty.
And those can be cross-posted to the tutorials layer too. So that'll be great.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. 72,000. That's so cool. Yeah.
Yep.
What's the here, I need to rank it by unique voters and go down to the lowest over 8 is investment and entrepreneurship opportunities for 3,000 lower committed. That's the lowest one.
Yeah. By the way,
Sorry.
if you are interested in any of these, right now is the cycle where you can go through and shop around. So once a month, there's a period where you can arbitrarily kind of shop around for an LCP that is a community layer with a hard cap. Now you can't put any more votes in it at this point, but if you're in one already and it's got more than 8 unique voters here, then you with a 2,500 matter fee. Maybe you split that among the other voters or whatever. You can create it even though it didn't get anywhere close to winning. And then the runners up is the same thing, except it's a lot cheaper. It's 2,468 and 1,000 matter for the first 5 runners up.
Wow.
And that's it's like get that done now because next week it's not, you know, everything starts over again.
There are some good ones in there. The Travels only has 2,000 people. It has 10 unique voters, but only 2,000.
Well, you know, that's interesting because there's travel and photography just one, and we have a layer called travel and photography.
Yes.
Just like we have an art layer. and we have an NFT layer, and we have an NFT art layer.
Yes.
You know, so those are great.
Yep.
All right. So that's what we've got. Awesome.
Okay.
Oh, what I wanted to bring up is I think this is an edge case we might have overlooked, and I want to make sure it gets hit. But what I was talking about, where if you follow somebody and you can see the layers that they post in your feed, I just want to make sure that we have that covered, where if you, for the eroticism layer, if I'm subscribed to it and you're subscribed to me, but you're not subscribed to it, and then I post my butt cheeks in the eroticism layer, is that going to show up in your feed, even if you don't subscribe to the layer? I just want to make sure that that's covered.
It will. It
You know
will.
what I mean?
But it'll be blurred. If
Yes.
the consensus is that it's NSFW.
Well, no, what I'm saying is right now, not the blurred part, but we have it set up to where you cannot subscribe to that layer, and you cannot go to a piece of content on that layer unless you pass a challenge saying, are you 18 plus or whatever the wording is. But does that also, because check this out.
Well, you would if you clicked on it.
If you clicked on it,
then bring it up.
Sure, but look,
It would then
right
show.
now I've clicked on nothing and I see all the images. So let's say that let's say that it's, even if it's blurred, will it show up? You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Right now, my assumption is it will show up, but it would be blurred unless the consensus is that it's not NSFW. Then the image would show.
Okay.
And if it's only text, then it would definitely show. Now,
Yeah.
if you clicked into it, then it's in that layer, so I think it'll prompt you that.
So if it was this one and this is blurred, I would click into it and then you would get that challenge. You wouldn't be able to I guess what I'm saying is I don't want people to be able to click the show me anyway button unless they have subscribed to interact with
I
it.
think I think in the feed when it says the show me anyway, you have to go into the I believe you have to go.
I think so too. I'll double check that as well.
That's a good.
But since we're here and it's a DAO meeting, I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
And I also, one thing we didn't really specifically hit, but we did sprinkle in all throughout this conversation has been, there was a post in Den support about basically like, why are there people voting stuff down? And all I have to say is that some people are going to vote stuff down for different reasons. And all of these, like you've got 13 upvotes, you've got a quorum. That one down vote is actually adding 27 energy to the pot that you get weighted against. So the end result is you're not getting punished here. Is that right, Joe?
Well, it is still calculated in because let's say it's 100 voters and one person voted you down.
Or this one's 17 and 3.
Instead of it being because it'll take the energy in that marketplace. It gauges it by consensus. So if you only had one voter, then it is severely attenuated. When you get past 13 voters, and effectively that will change when we get more of the layer metrics in place, because the more active users in the layer, the higher that number should be. But right now, across the board, 13 has been a very good, solid place to put it for the quorum. But the quorum's hit, so that doesn't matter at all. So it's 100%. And if one person voted you down and 99 voted you up, then it's 99% of whatever the energy value you have is what you go in with the score. And all of that energy is taken against the score. So let's say there were, let's say 10,000 upvotes from the 99 people and 10,000 energy and downvotes from the one person, right? So you're getting 99% of 20,000.
Yes.
So that's now if they only voted one, then it's 10,001, and they might be cutting you a tiny bit, but it's still the consensus is what really matters.
Yeah, and it's not going to be a perfect end result with humans ever. So we have to to me, and this is why I want to bring it up, because I looked at these numbers, and it was a good question. And I'm glad it was brought up for discussion because there's a lot of discussion under it. But when I looked at the numbers, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I would be proud of those numbers. That's fantastic.
Me too. Those are great numbers.
Yeah.
one person out of 14. That's really good.
Yeah.
And to get effectively 41, 20, 30 something, 34 energy. It's really good. Now here's the other interesting thing is that one person who downvoted, you can't objectively say why they did it because their methods might just be different than anybody. And their methods in this case are, if they repeatedly do this, are objectively not working,
Right.
that
Yeah.
for what the system does. So it ends up being an interesting thing that you're going to have people who vote something up or down for a reason that you disagree with, but that's not the point of it. It's a prediction market. So they're just putting their bet in.
Now, in fairness, I do want to try my best to answer the question that I think is being asked indirectly, which is how do we prevent this from happening as a community? Like, let's say that's my goal, is I don't want to see these negative votes, and I think it's the same people over and over again. Well, you need to change your reputation settings in your layer, I think is the answer for that. Because when someone does this, obviously they're going against consensus every time. And that's going to affect their reputation, right?
There is one thing.
Or is that only for content creation?
Right now, reputation only counts for content. We
I'm
need
wrong.
to add voting reputation. And the interesting thing about that is it could be dangerous, because if you want only people who vote with the rest of the community, it's going to get very much pushed into a bubble. But that literally might be what you want. That's a feature, because you might want a very streamlined, agreeable community, and you might want to say, we don't want any people throwing wrenches in the discussion.
Let me redesign what I said, because you're right, I was wrong. So thank you for correcting me, because you can still achieve the same thing by setting a reputation score on who's allowed to vote. But you have to remember that what you're saying is somebody must create some kind of content in this layer to be evaluated so that they can get that some sort of reputation score. Then we can let you vote. Yeah. So you can still achieve that. There's just like the extra step.
But I do think if we added, and we've talked about this in the past, if we added a reputation measure on your voting, to know, wait, and it's I didn't call it back then. It wasn't even necessarily it was there's a term that I used that essentially meant that, unbeknownst to you, you tend to vote the things that consensus has decided are good up, and the things that decided are bad down, and it's not necessarily a reputation, because it's like, it isn't really that. It's more than anything, it is how do I say this? Whatever the word is that you are.
Conformity?
Maybe it's conformity. But it's one way or another, it is that you tend to guess right. That your accuracy in prediction, and that's
skill.
not.
I would say skill.
Yeah, eval skill or
or competency, or so, maybe none of those are great words, but I know you're getting at.
If you had that there, it would be useful. I wouldn't like put it at the top clip, but it would be useful to curtail some people that are
like your Oracle score. Make it a mysticism thing.
It should be Oracle. Yeah. Because it would be useful to say, okay, the people who only come here to vote good stuff down shouldn't be voting. That's the type of stuff. With the people who are kind of in the middle, that sometimes, it's like, I wouldn't want to cut them out, because
they'll eventually figure it out. That's fine. Yeah.
So, and the other thing to note, for the people who are worried about this, first of all, is don't think of it in an emotional way. Don't think of it as someone attacking. Sometimes they are, admittedly, we know that, right? People will vote stuff down. I know they do it to Dave a lot, that they do vote stuff down. I
got banned from a couple of layers already.
I know.
It was great. It wasn't great. Don't do it again. But
but it's the fact that happens. Just don't take it personally. Just keep going, because most people aren't like that, and those people will get tired of doing it eventually. But I think the important thing to say is there's a scarcity. They don't have unlimited energy. So Facebook, it matters. Like, I'm just going to downvote this guy it's like, here you can't do that. They have to still think about it. It's like, okay, I'm going to downvote that post.
And
It's
to do that
interesting.
massively, this goes into the more of the territory of like armchair stuff,
Yeah.
like coffee, conversation or something. But in order to effectively attack that system and be like a monster negative influence, you literally, you kind of have to enrich the community by obtaining enough power in the first place, because the only way that you can attain that power is by participating or either participating in the activities that are incentivized that we want, or literally just throwing a bunch of money at it, which raises the value for everyone. So it's like, yeah, I mean, you want to pump the price, great.
Yeah. And there might be an argument for increasing the share of eval rewards. They're there, but they aren't as, when we first rolled this out, the design wanted to make the content rewards really meaty, so that you bring the content people in. But maybe, once the platform grows enough, it might make sense to push a little more value to the eval. I don't know.
It may make sense to reevaluate that annually, because the conditions of Den are going to change annually, and you're going to need different things in different years. Right now we really need more content creators, of course, but do we need more quality evaluators more than that right now? I don't know.
Right.
Or is the balance off? Hey, real quick, do you have a call that you're missing right now before we
I will look. I do.
Okay. We've covered almost all of this. Okay. And Greg, if you want to stay on for a minute, Joe, if you wanted to,
I can take off. Right on.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I'll talk to you guys
soon. All right. Thanks, Joe. Go get that. So yeah, I'm glad that I was able to keep him through and make him late for his meeting for a minute, so we can get that in. Good stuff. So that makes sense to you, Greg? All that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like a lot of. Obviously, it's a lot easier to look at the list and pick priorities when you've got so many important things to do. But I think prioritizing the things that are foundational to the later things and that may enrich them makes a heck of a lot of sense, and I think that's what's going on. So
yeah, I like this system here with voting too, because it lets you pivot when like every time you iterate. You can, if you need to, you can pivot. Like we might think we want the leaderboard next or cross posting next, but something might happen tomorrow where I'm like, oh, you know what? We should do that instead. So it lets you, every time you make something, it's like, okay, are we still in the same trajectory? I see it like a living roadmap, like a dynamic living roadmap kind of thing. And then,
right. It's more of a strategy sync up than anything.
Yes. Communication, signaling, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, right. It is it's 4:15, so I think that we're going to wrap this up. Unless you have anything else you want to talk about right now.
I just wanted to make a quick open bid for the notion that we might get onto this list. Treasury management features.
Yes. So I'm behind schedule. I spent a couple of weeks in a deep depression and not producing anything, and so I'm behind schedule on a couple of things. But that can be third on my list. Or you can get a different DENDAO lot holder. The way that we do that is you can pop into Den, or you can pop into DENDAO and discuss. Hey, just put like new post discussion this thing. And like this, Joe posted Den feature prioritization discussion, which later became an actual proposal, right? So we can discuss the thing, and then through conversation, we might discover exactly what we want and exactly like what to propose. And then anybody who has a DENDAO lot can propose that, and it'll end up in this list of governance GIs to be voted on. So that's kind of the path. But I owe two more. I owe two of them before I get to yours. So we can start talking about it already.
For what it's worth, though, I did post it in reply. So there's post a little snippet about it in the reply. So
awesome. I should have hit this first. I'm sorry, Josh-O. You and Greg both posted down here, and I didn't even look at it. Josh-O said, "I'm interested to know what layer Alice in Wonderland is having created. I'm sure you'll go over that. Looking forward to listening to the call." That must be the one. Is that one of the new ones that got created, like World News or something? I don't know. I have not seen that discussion. in the future, maybe put a link to that discussion so I can see what you're talking about, and then I'll give you an answer. But what did I say? DIY, world news, firearms, photography, eroticism.
Yep. And the strategy for eating Discord and algorithm platform at the same time.
Yes.
Because those guys are using the wrong system because they don't have anything that does just these two little basic items a little better. So.
That was now that I'm reading this here, that was a really good idea. Thank you for coming up with that, because I hadn't thought of it. But you're right. If the smart contract treasuries already exist, then theoretically that could be tied right into the DEN governance, and then you could vote without fees, and then just pay one fee to send the signaling or something like that. So cool. All right. So that is our DENDAO call for June 23rd. We'll be back same time next week. And I think Greg might be coming in more often. I went ahead and put this on his calendar every week, so hold him to it.
I'll be here, guys. Especially once it's on my calendar, it's kind of set in stone. So I will
awesome.
now no longer be able to take other calls that interrupt this time period.
And thanks, Josh O, I Am for I Am, and anybody else I missed. Thanks, Hyperion Frequency, again, for the ideas about how to maybe mitigate the negative effects of dormant lot holders, because that's really good and interesting ideas. And that's all that I've got. So we'll see you next week. Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best. Adaptable, raw capital, label radical yet rational. A tactical approach is palpable if this animal is fallible, but that conclusion is laughable. So with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.